risk. Risk is our business. That's what the Starship is all about. That's why we're aboard her.
Engage.
There are 3 things to remember about being a starship captain. Keep your shirt tucked in, go down with the ship, and never abandon a member of your crew.
I don't care if the odds are against us. If we're going to lose, then we're going to go down fighting.
But we're going to learn from those mistakes. That's what being human is all about.
What a piece of work is man.
It is a tale told by an idiot.
Make it so.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to the Boldly Going Podcast, a podcast where 3 guys talk about every episode of Star Trek that's ever been made. I'm your host, Alec.
I'm Bailey. And I wish I wasn't here.
Yes, folks, we watched Charlie X this week, and let me tell you, the r/Nice Guys, the episode, was a bit of a roller coaster. Every time we sit down to do these podcasts, I personally have a grade that's already been put on my sheet. And as the other guys will tell you, I don't have one yet. Because what? Let's start with some...
Let's start with positives. The preview. Yes. The preview was pretty okay. Because ultimately, it didn't give a lot away.
Well, it didn't have much to work with, so...
Well, you got to work with what you've got.
Other positives. Spock defeats a child at chess in 2 moves using all his skill and doesn't hold back. It's delightful. I mean, it's okay because trust me, guys, the child is a dick. But it's still funny to watch like an adult chess grandmaster play a child and 2-move him and be like sucker and walk out.
What I find curious is the start of this episode. It's either great or not great because it goes past a lot of the setting. It doesn't have much in the way of an opening scene. It really is just this guy gets beamed up, and the story starts.
Maybe I can shed some light on some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Yeah. Because this episode aired the 15th of September, 1966. It was the 8th episode produced, but it was the 2nd episode aired. So you get Man Trap, which is a great episode. Then you get this pile of garbage. The teleplay was by D.C. Fontana. Now, D.C. Fontana is going to go on to write a bunch of great episodes. So when I saw her name connected to this, I was really excited, but I forgot that D.C. Fontana had been Gene Roddenberry's secretary up to this point. So, you got to start somewhere. She was the story editor as well. So this first crack, not great, but again, it's not, it's where you're starting. And the story came from Gene Roddenberry, so he gets a credit for it, even though his story credit is a 1-sentence description of the idea for an episode called When Charlie Became God. So this is really D.C. Fontana's story, but he still gets credit for it. It is directed by Lawrence Dobkin, who only directs this episode, but 25 years later, he's going to guest star as the Klingon ambassador Kel in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, which makes him literally the only person in history to direct an episode of the original series and then later play an actor in a Star Trek spinoff. This is the first of 6 episodes that take place entirely aboard the Enterprise. The others, in case you're wondering, are The Changeling, Journey to Babel, Alana of Troyes, Is There No Truth in Beauty, and Let This Be Your Last Battlefield. And that's a bit of a mixed bag, in case you're wondering, because Journey to Babel is great. Let There Be Your Last Battlefield is a heavy-handed message about racism, but not terrible. Alana of Troyes is hot garbage. I don't remember anything about Is There No Truth in Beauty, other than a young actress who's going to go on to play Dr. Pulaski on TNG appears on it. And I literally can't tell you what The Changeling is about off the top of my head. So Charlie X falls in that proud category of ship bottle episodes exclusively, of which only Journey to Babel will rise out of. But here's the thing, see, this episode was originally scheduled to air much later because it had action and some ideas, but when they realized it required no new outer special effects space shots, because all the Enterprise exterior shots are from the first 2 pilots, they're recycled, and it cost almost no effects. Its post-production took less time. They rushed it to be the 2nd episode to air out of necessity because no other episodes were ready to reach the deadline. So the Antares destruction was supposed to be on screen, some stuff like that, but all of that got cut to make way for the production. NBC hated that it was a teenage melodrama set in space, but they had to go forward with it.
Can't say they're wrong.
The one good thing that came out of this episode, though, is Ira Steve Bear, who is going to go on to become the showrunner of Deep Space Nine, which is my favorite Star Trek, said this was the episode of the show that won him over, which I don't understand why the man who could go on to create the best Star Trek could like such a pile of trash. But you know what? I don't care what his reasons were because I love what Ira Steve Bear did, so I'm glad Charlie X exists.
Okay.
Not because of the episode itself.
Yep. Yeah.
So, where do we start? Let's start with let's start with every garbage fire you start with. You start at the beginning. As Ethan pointed out, there is no real opening. They just pull up to the ship and Kirk says, "We're picking up this kid from the Antares. I don't know why Kirk is Brooklyn no more." Kirk says, "Captain's log. They're picking up from the cargo ship Antares, the survivor of a planet." What the heck was the name of the planet? I can't even remember.
Also, don't care.
Doesn't matter. Charlie was the survivor of some planet, Phasia, I think.
Yes.
Thessia is the Asari homeworld from Mass Effect, but I can remember that, so I'm just going to call it Thessia. So Charlie's from not Thessia. He's a human, and Crash lived on there when he was 3, and he's lived on his own ever since until these traders found him. And they're bringing him back to Earth Colony Alpha 5, where Evan's only living relatives live. So they bring him on board in a scene that is a little awkward and in a way sets the tone, and you think this isn't very well kind of set or acted, but then I don't actually have a lot of problems with this opening scene because once you understand why the crew is so desperate to get away from Charlie, they're like, yeah, he's a great kid. Man, I don't have time for entertainment tapes or Sorry and Brandy. We're on a tight schedule, Captain Kirk. We got to go. Have Charlie, you were great. I'm so happy to have you aboard, my dude.
I actually found it it was actually kind of creepy because the rest of the episode didn't happen yet, you know? Because, we didn't know what was going on. So it was a little creepy in a way, which kind of worked.
Yeah.
But if they would have kept, the creepy tone, it would have worked a whole lot better.
So almost, turn this into a horror episode in a way.
I think that would have worked a lot better.
It would have really worked because let's get this out of the gate right at the beginning. Are we supposed to sympathize with Charlie?
I think no. I
They were
honestly
confused,
don't. I think that they want us to understand him but not sympathize with him. And I do, I feel very strongly that if they were going for that, they did a good job because I knowledge-wise, I do understand why he turned out the way he did.
Yeah, the isolation from a young age. It makes sense.
It's a case of, regardless of circumstance, there's still some fundamental truths about interaction that just because situations happen doesn't excuse them. And that's a hard topic to sort of broach and discuss in a way that's going to turn into good science fiction.
Because I was going to say no, but then right at the end, Kirk is like, well, why don't we take him with us so that he can learn not to use his powers, and his alien dad, who he doesn't love because he's a floating... We're getting way ahead. This isn't how we normally do episodes, but we got to get this out of the game right away.
I think they got confused on what they wanted. Because, like you said, right off the bat, we can understand why he is acting so antisocial in general. Because of his isolation from a completely young age. But then they directly go into this almost sympathy overload.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird...
I think you hit actually closer to it when you said they sort of lost track of what they were trying to convey, because at the beginning I was more convinced when he just came on and they give him medical approval and says, the other ship, they didn't like me, I want people to like me. And I'm like, that's a little more relatable, because not feeling like you belong is a pretty general, understandable thing.
And at the beginning, he makes honest mistakes that a person in isolation would make. Like when he smacks Janice on the butt right at the beginning, and then she's upset by that, and he's upset that she's upset.
And he's confused.
But he only did it because the two crewmen did it before. Yeah. But then, partway through, they transfer the idea of what's going on to he wants to essentially dominate women. I don't usually go there quickly, but that's pretty fast where the episode jumps to.
He blinks an adorable 17-year-old triple junior yeoman who's clearly a high school intern who's all bubbly and excited to be there. He turns her into a lizard for no reason, only because she's not Janice. And we're Tina! No! She's 17. No, we know she's 17 because Janice said you should meet other people your own age.
Just think about how traumatized she's going to be after this.
Yeah,
Like, I
think
feel so bad.
It's just this idea of losing track of what is originally a more neutral, understandable concept,
Absolutely.
and transforming it into the cringy. I really want to be loved and to be assertive and be that guy.
This could have worked as a horror
could've
episode.
worked.
Yeah.
As a horror episode where they didn't get muddled. For those of you at home who are who haven't watched Charlie X in a while, who have scrubbed it for your brains, okay, think about TNG. Think about Q. Think about Q, but without any of the charisma, charm, or talent. And to be fair, I have no problem with the actor, Robert Walker.
Yeah.
DC Fontana and Grace Lee Whitney both said he did a pretty good job, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I thought he did a great job. So getting that out of the way, you've got Q, but he's a 17-year-old boy, but he's also more emotionally and intellectually like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a toddler in a body.
He's
Kirk
a toddler in a
describes him
boy's
as a
hormones.
teenager who's being
An
ruled in that
adolescent.
body, and I'm like, that is
No.
not correct. He is a toddler using this body and these powers.
He's got all the powers of Q, but instead of being like kind of quirky and goofy because he's an adult who has like a degree of understanding, he's kind of horrifying and not very likable at all.
Yeah.
So nothing like Q. And for the record, Charlie is not a Q. He's a Thasian or whatever. They gave him the power, which, by the way, good job, aliens. But we are so off topic, but our brains are melted because we literally just watched this episode as a group like 10 minutes ago, and we're trying to figure out what we just saw. So
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the acting. I think it all has to do with the writing.
I would agree with that 100%.
Sorry, DC. I know you're going to go on to write Journey to Babel and a couple of my other favorite episodes. You know what? Nobody's perfect for your first try, but this is not good work. Don't put this on your highlight reel. Where were we? We were... Okay. They're dropping Charlie off on the Enterprise. The navigator and the first officer of the Antares. They can't say enough good things about Charlie the boy, and they want to get out of here. Kirk offers them entertainment tapes. I don't know what that is, but
He
that
offers
sounds
them
pretty
so
steamy.
much.
He even offers them Sorry and Brandy, and they're like in a hurry to get there. Janice comes in, and we're all excited to see Janice again.
Yeah.
Charlie, who's been interrupting, and at first you think it's just he doesn't know social graces. It's an early clue, because it's one of those harmless things where he keeps interrupting people, and Kirk says, Charlie, you don't interrupt people, that's rude. And he goes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Janice comes in, and he looks at her all dumbfounded, because he's been by himself, and we assume the Antares are all men, because it's only a 20-person crew. And he goes, is that a girl? Kirk nods and gives a little sly smirk. He's like, yes, Charlie, that's a
Kirk
girl.
was weird in this episode.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it.
I'm
Kirk was
half
weird.
surprised Kirk didn't go, no, Charlie, that's a woman. It's especially, it's a weird...
Yeah.
It's weird if you watch some of the episodes. Like last week, we watched Naked Time, so that's a little fresh in our minds, where Kirk is
dignified,
and Kirk likes Janice, but he can't.
He respects her.
But he also he has his office. Now this one, he's like, yeah, she's a girl, all right, Charlie. She's a fine-looking girl. He doesn't say any of that, but his tone. But
this is what people remember when they think of Kirk.
Grace
like,
Lee,
this is what they're thinking of.
Whitney continues to be the best though, because she gives this like expression of just like, where the heck do you find these guys? Like kind of this double. I can do it, but it doesn't work over. It's a great facial expression.
Yeah.
It's one of the saving graces of the episode. So they two of them leave, and Charlie goes to see Dr. McCoy. They go on the Stairmaster. We
Yay!
haven't seen the Stairmaster
I love that Stairmaster.
in a while. McCoy reiterates that Charlie's been alone since he was 3 years old, living on the planet. He asks him about what he would eat. He says, the supply rations would have run out. They wouldn't have lasted 14 years. Charlie's very non-committal. He's like, I found stuff and things growing. And McCoy's like, it makes sense to me. You're totally healthy. You totally check out. You're a fine, healthy young man. And Charlie kicks off what's going to be the running theme kind of in this episode. We ask McCoy if McCoy likes him.
Mm-hmm.
And McCoy gives the most McCoy answer. Everybody goes, why not? Leonard H. Bones McCoy is one of the few lights in this dark episode.
He's the father figure that Charlie needed.
It's too bad. Kirk tried to pawn Charlie off on Bones. So Charlie leaves sickbay. He's got nothing to do. He just kind of wanders around. He sees a janitor working in a tube, and he's always
fascinated,
about that.
which is actually neat. I was actually okay with that shot.
Yeah.
And it showed him trying to understand the crew, not trying to corner Janice. And I'm like, every time I dealt with the crew, it was good.
I would have liked it if there was a bit more conversation in the long shot, because it was so long. Just at least like the janitor being like, okay, anything.
The scene is a little long,
yeah.
and that's something you're going to notice is there's a lot of really There's a couple of scenes that go on for way too long, and it's clear that the idea was like 45 minutes long rather than, heck, let's say 40 minutes long rather than 50 minutes long, because there's another scene that Charlie's following crew around. He sees two guys working in the janitorial, not in the janitorial, in the Jeffries tubes, and they're like, hey man, great job. And the one dude smacks the other dude on the butt because it was the 60s, and like, whatever man, it's your mate. It's what you do. It's like a football team.
Yeah.
Sports ball. Getting horribly off track. This is what this episode has done to us, folks. It's broken our brains, which is funny because, I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember this episode. Like, to me, it was going to be like, when I got into this, I'm thinking, here's like a C, you know, it's going to be totally average. It's totally unmemorable. Turns out what I did was blot my brain out and delete the memories of Charlie.
I'm not going to remember this episode tomorrow. Not going to remember it tomorrow.
Are you kidding me? I'll never be able to forget this episode.
No, it'll just
terribleness. Don't worry, it'll all be forgotten and we can go back to rewatching. Folks, if you've been watching along with the podcast, just watch Man-Trap twice. Wow. Or watch The Naked Time twice. Go back and rewatch the pilot.
Yeah.
You know, Gary Mitchell was a godlike being too, and we rage on him for being a douchebag, but it turns out we were so wrong.
Anyways, back to things. At least it seems that the crew, or rather the bridge crew, they have their heads on pretty okay. They realize he needs a father figure. They essentially appoint Kirk to do so, even though Kirk does his best to pass it off on Bones.
And talks the birds and the bees with them.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
But Spock mentions the Thasians.
Again.
And that's sort of going to be a recurring feature of, like, are they really mythical beings? And that's sort of like your clue for the episode of, like, there you got something to
It's interesting to me, though, as an aside, because let's not talk about this episode. Let's talk about Spock and McCoy. You'd think that McCoy would be the one who'd be like, mythical aliens, maybe they could be real. And Spock's like, well, the evidence doesn't support that. But it's actually the other way around in this episode. Now, before, Spock believes the Thasians must be real because he doesn't think that Charlie would be able to survive on his own as a kid.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense from where Spock's coming from. Whether they're like that or not, he's not ready to commit to the idea of that until later in the episode when Charlie begins to demonstrate the abilities, because a human being could just learn to do what they do. He can just create. Because you see, the next scene with Charlie is he's talking to Janice, who he's got a big ol' crush on, and he makes her like a thing. I missed the line. Where
it was perfume.
Oh, he makes her a perfume, and she really likes it. And she's like, oh, that's my favorite. Where'd it come from? Because Janice knows that no one on the ship, none of the ship's stores, which, as an aside, I like the idea that the Enterprise has got like a gift shop or something on it. It's got little T-shirts, and you can buy. I guess it's more like a canteen or a mess, but she says they don't carry it. He says, where'd it come from? Oh, it's a gift.
It's a present.
And so already we're establishing that Charlie's not just weird, like he can do stuff, but we're not sure the extent of his power.
Yeah.
And so Janice is kind of trying to be nice to him and kind of trying to break it because she's literally like just met him once and she doesn't realize that he's being a total creep.
Yeah.
And so she's like, why don't you come hang out for a little bit? And we now, when we see the rec room, we know it's a big public space. So Janice is continuing to be incredibly competent.
Yep.
Yes.
So he's like, okay, Janice. He says, okay, friend. He smacks Janice on the butt. Janice doesn't like that very much. She gets pretty upset that this kid just smacked her in the butt.
Also where I think that the show goes a little off the rails because it's where they turned that idea of social awkwardness into sexual awkwardness. And I think that that's where it started. Like, if they had just done that one thing, but moved on to a different form of social awkwardness, it would have fit well in a broad spectrum of,
I can see that.
Here's just all of the ways it's manifesting that he hasn't met people. Whereas it sort of took that and was like, yeah, that's the one we want to go with. And the rest of the episode.
It is. They focus on the idea that he's like in love with Janice. Not in love with her, because as Janice points out later, he's like, you don't know what love means. But he's like a teenage boy, and he's popped his first one, and he's obsessed with this older woman.
It's more of like the lust or the sexual desire taking hold.
Exactly, because again, he's not only an adolescent boy, so he's got those hormones. But he's also like he's like mentally like a child. So he's got even less capability to deal with these than a regular teenager. And that's not saying much. But that happens, and she gets rightfully upset with him. But then he also gets upset back because he doesn't know what he did wrong. And she says, "Well, have Dr. McCoy, or Dr. Kirk, man. Like I'm telling you, my brain is broken." She's like, "Have Dr. McCoy or Captain Kirk explain it to you that you can't go around smacking girls." And he goes, okay, that makes sense, because he wants to be liked.
Yep.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Then we go over to the mess hall. It actually
Yes!
does skip to them going to the mess hall, and we have an
Doesn't
interesting scene.
Kirk doesn't talk. Kirk
Not
doesn't
yet.
talk to him first.
No, he gets the dad talk from Kirk a little later.
Because he gets a dad talk from Kirk like twice.
Okay, then
No,
maybe
no,
the first one
you're
was
right.
good.
He goes to see the chef because it's Thanksgiving.
Yep.
This is literally in the episode. He says it's Thanksgiving, and if the crew's going to eat synthetic meatloaf, it should taste like turkey.
Which I'm surprised that they still observe Thanksgiving,
Why?
given that it's like specifically North American,
I
not
guess.
like global. But like, hey, whatever.
What's
like,
more surprising to me is that they can replicate meatloaf but not turkey.
yeah,
I'm like,
that's a
that
little
seems
weird.
a little arbitrary.
It's the early years of the transporter technology,
Okay.
the replicator. And then Kirk has this really bad, because Charlie's like, Janice told me to talk to you, he tries to explain it, he stirs his way through it, Kirk's like, well, Charlie, you can't go around hitting girls in the butt. It's basically like he says.
Yeah.
It takes him like 5 minutes to get to the
but
point.
he also like
Well,
tries
men and
to
women
do like
are
a
different.
like a weird birds in the
He tries
bees
to
talk.
merge the beast.
Yeah,
Bad.
it's just like, it's something.
Kirk does a weirdly terrible job at something you think would be pretty basic. Like, I get Kirk is not a father,
Yeah,
but I don't understand. It seems out of character for me. And we've discussed extensively on this program at this point how Kirk is not like this lust maniac that everyone thinks he is.
Yeah.
But he is a grown man. You think he'd be able to say, well, Charlie, men and women are different. And, when you're attracted to a woman, you do things, but you don't act on them. It's not appropriate. You think he'd be able to stumble, it might not be comfortable, but I could probably do the birds and the bees with a kid. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, the fearless leader of the Enterprise tries to get the talk through to Charlie, and it doesn't go great.
It doesn't go great.
And then we get that other
Yeah,
scene.
we go to the mess. The rec room.
Probably the only truly good scene in the episode.
I
And
didn't like the singing, but I appreciate what it was
half.
doing.
Yeah.
I mean the first half before
Right.
Charlie gets involved.
Ah.
Because Spock is playing his Vulcan lute. It's the first appearance of the Vulcan lute, which is another one of those iconic things. 3D tic-tac-toe is back. We're not sure if it's 3D checkers anymore, looking closely, but I swear to you I read on Memory Alpha that it was 3D tic-tac-toe, and I'm going to stick with that.
Well, stick to your guns, man.
3D
If you're going to be wrong, be spectacularly
3D
wrong.
tic-tac-toe is back, and the circular playing cards are back, because once again, just like Mudd's Women, the only redeeming feature in terrible episodes is those circular playing cards, which I just adore. Uhura is farting around in the break room, and she starts, and she's just kind of musically inclined. And as an aside, they rewrote this segment for Nichelle Nikos, because originally they were going to have Uhura as a mimic doing parodies of her fellow officers for the amusement of the lower bridge crew.
I surprisingly would have personally enjoyed that more, but I like what they did, even if I didn't like the actual singing. I don't know, it just doesn't suit my style. But I like that they gave her that chance to do it, and teasing Spock was hilarious. Spock even was very
bemused
in his own way.
Because Nichelle Nikos is, of course, a trained, I think, jazz singer or something like that.
Yeah.
So they
You
gave
can
it to
tell.
her. She's like, so even if it's not your cup of tea, you can appreciate from a technical level that it is her and she's competent at it.
Yeah.
She sings kind of this ditty about how Spock looks like Satan. And about how, careful girls, the devil from the stars is going to come and steal your heart. Totally, lampshading the entire, Star Trek fan community at, 1966, because, chicks were thirsty for Spock.
Yep.
Well, I don't blame
Let her
him with
kneel-
that tight shirt.
We're still
Moving on.
his massive biceps from the last episode. So they sing a little ditty, but again, I talk about how the episode feels like it has, a lot of filler.
Yeah.
The sequence goes on for too long. Not necessarily this first part, although I think it goes on a little too long. But then Charlie comes in, and he wants to show Janice a card trick. But Janice is like, in a minute, I'm listening to Uhura roast Spock.
And then even worse, Uhura switches to teasing Charlie.
About how he's got a crush on Janice, which is not very
Doesn't
smart.
go over great.
Janice is like,
Janice is a little uncomfortable, but she's like, whatever. And so Charlie, in his kind of second display of power, but the first time we've seen him, he steals the sound from the lute and from Uhura's voice. And this is the first time we see Charlie roll his
The crazy
eyes
eyes?
up
Oh
into
man, I
his head.
can't deal with that.
And they always play the serious musical sting, and
and zoom in.
it undercuts so much tension.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you guys this right now, and I know you're going to agree with me without even having to poll you, but would it have been more effective if he just looked blankly ahead and not made a ridiculous facial expression?
It depends on if they're trying to create mystery. Because if they're trying to show that he has to concentrate to do it, sure. But I don't think I have this particular preference either way, because Well, I'll just say that at the very least, the one that is there looks stupid.
Maybe he could have closed his eyes and like rolled his brow.
Yeah, so something a little less.
They needed to go back to the
ridiculous.
drawing board because
Yeah.
that expression is terrible.
That was bad.
It makes it amusing though.
You're right, because showing that he needs to concentrate is an important plot point.
Yeah.
So I think he should have just closed his eyes and.
Tensed up.
It might have looked like he had to take a poop, like the telepathic aliens.
And he doesn't there. He just looks like he's having a real bad one.
So he takes the voice away from Uhura and Spock, and then immediately shows Janice a card trick, and apparently Janice doesn't notice that like Uhura and Spock are freaking out about how there's no noise coming, and apparently nobody else is either.
Yeah, no one cares.
Because Charlie, and I'm going to assume Charlie is cheating at his card tricks.
Oh, you better believe it.
He turns the cards into promotional stills of Janice Rand from like the early Star Trek launch bay, and she's like, "Where'd you get those pictures?" It's like,
Well, no, she says, "How did you do that?"
she's
and
not
that's-
immediately terrified.
Yeah,
by that.
like, how did you get these pictures of me?
Yeah. Well, which is what I would have asked personally. But
and
hey.
then it's like, okay, I understand you're continuing to spread the thing, and he's got a crush on her, and he's got powers. The scene should have ended there.
Yeah.
The scene should have ended with the trick where he turned the cards into pictures of her, because then it propels the plot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't end here, folks. It goes on for another 2 minutes where he just does a bunch of actual card tricks, and everyone gathers around and is like, "Ooh, impressive."
And then there's the one he gets
Where
in
he-
her bra, which is sort of like, again, they're pushing that
But we've already.
sexual side of things.
But they're just regular card tricks. Like the other one, it's like, oh, he had to use a supernatural power to change the cards, made it look like her. Okay, I get it. You're doing, very clever. And then it's like, nope, 2 minutes of regular card tricks, because this script was like 35 minutes long.
Yeah.
Ugh, where am I?
But you're at the second dad talk from Kirk.
Right, because
Tina.
oh wait,
And then
right, no,
Right.
Tina comes. Tina comes
this
later.
This episode just messed us up.
Tina comes later because now Kirk is asked to come up to the bridge.
Oh,
He gets up to the bridge,
Yeah.
and the captain of the Antares at extreme range is trying to warn them. Charlie went up to the bridge with Kirk.
Yes.
Kirk's like, "Don't come to the bridge, Charlie." He's like, "I won't get in the way." And Kirk hasn't seen any of Charlie's creepy behavior.
So he's just like, yeah.
And he's like, "Okay, fine, you're a curious kid, whatever, points for good behavior." And he lets Charlie come up. The captain at the Antares tries to warn them about something, but then his ship gets destroyed. We don't see it on screen to save budgetary money. And Charlie, instead of playing it cool and not saying anything, because Charlie is inept, says, "Well, it wasn't very well constructed." Which is what he says before Spock even confirms that the ship is destroyed. Because Spock is like, "Yep, debris from the Antares." But he's like, "Charlie, you know something?" Charlie goes, "I don't know." And then Kirk gets hailed by the Enterprise chef, which is, again, one of the only decent things in this whole episode, because the chef is voiced by Gene Roddenberry himself, and this is literally the only time in Star Trek history that Gene Roddenberry will, be involved, not even on screen, but in any capacity. Gene doesn't do cameos. He's not like Stan Lee or Stephen King or one of those guys, but he does this little sequence. You're like, oh, that's a cute little trivia piece. Because the chef is like, "Hey, Kirk, those meatloafs have turned into live turkeys in the oven, man." And Charlie laughs and then leaves. And then Kirk's like, "Wow, man, that was weird." This is the same scene. This is a tonal mess. Because the first half of the scene... A tonal mess, folks. Because the first half of the scene is to establish that it's kind of scary, because we're pretty sure Charlie killed 20 people by blowing up a ship.
Again, it would have worked if this was like a space horror.
In the same scene, literally seconds after Spock has confirmed that the ship blew up, and Kirk is trying to get Charlie to admit that he blew it up, we get this joke call about how the meatloaf was real turkeys, because Charlie heard Kirk talk about how the meatloaf should taste like turkey because it's Thanksgiving, and then Charlie laughs, and Kirk's like, "What the heck? Meatloaf doesn't turn into turkeys." What a mess! I can't believe how much I didn't think I would get more passionate about an episode being bad than Mud's Women, but Mud's Women looks like Citizen Kane next to some of this crap.
The more we talk about it, the more this is going downhill.
It actually is.
I actually was gonna rate this episode higher than Mud's Women, and I think I've changed my own mind. Because Mud's Women, some of those scenes were terrible, but they were at least coherent with their own tone.
Yeah.
Oh man, that happens.
Anyways, where were we again?
We have the only other good scene in the episode, which is again cut way too short. Kirk and Spock play chess together again, like they did in the pilot, but now both characters are actually like themselves.
Fully formed.
So,
well, Kirk is a little bit weird.
This scene should have been in a better episode. They could have, instead of having the time travel from the end of Naked Time. Just have Spock Kirk play chess at the end of Naked Time for 2 minutes and talk about emotions and stuff. Am I right, my dude?
Yep.
Yeah.
The point is, Spock is talking to Kirk, and he's like, look, Kirk, like, Charlie is a threat, and we should probably be careful that he doesn't kill everyone. And Kirk's like, he's just a kid. Spock's like, no, he's very dangerous. You could say Kirk's blinded because he's got that emotion where he's like, he's just a kid. And, what's he going to do? And Spock's like, he blew up that ship, Kirk.
Didn't you hear him?
Charlie comes in to watch them play, and Spock is beaten by Kirk in an illogical manner because Kirk plays chess like he runs the ship by his instinct, and Spock's like, well, sometimes it has its advantages. It's a neat little scene, a nice little interaction between the characters.
But then
Charlie's like, can I play? And Kirk's like, sure, I leave you in the hands of Chess Master Spock.
Spock's like, please don't.
Spock doesn't want to be left alone with the murderer. Except maybe he does because he wants to confirm his own suspicion.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about Spock. Like, you never know how cool
Yeah,
he
you
is.
can never tell, because if he didn't want to be alone with a murderer, you'd be surprised by his next move, which is to absolutely disrespect this boy.
I love it so much. It's one of the best parts of the episode because we've established many times by now that Charlie is basically a child and Spock is a chess grandmaster. And Charlie very rudely is like, I know how to play, let's just start.
Yeah.
And Spock makes his first move.
Which is, like, it's funny because we know that Spock is essentially their chess grandmaster, and yet the only 2 times we've seen Kirk play him, Kirk has won.
It's kind of like, though, like a pro playing video games on like a pro circuit who then
Yeah.
plays against a total noob. And then the total noob
Yeah,
wins because
you are-
he does something that...
You are meant to understand that Kirk is not a regular winner of these things.
Yeah.
And yet, it's just funny that the 2 examples we have are Kirk winning.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to the current match.
Charlie makes
Charlie moves, and Kirk's like, Spock's like, that's a mistake.
Charlie goes, no, it's not. Spock goes, fine. Checkmate. And then he leaves. Then he gets up and walks out of the room.
And he can, like, this, to me, is a little bit inconsistent with Spock's because if Spock actually believes this child is a time bomb, why would you disrespect him and then leave the room?
Spock elbow drops. He's like,
Mike drops and walks out.
like, so it's like, oh man. Anyway, that's hilarious. Charlie makes some crap about how no, it isn't, but Spock just walks off because he's done with this.
Yeah.
Charlie gets mad and melts the chess pieces because, again, Charlie is like a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So after that scene, then we have Ensign Yeoman Rand is trying to like introduce Charlie to people his own age. She introduces her to Yeoman Tina Lawton, who is like a
What a
third
good girl.
class. And it's like,
girl.
I'm going to say it like this, and I'm not being a creepy old man, so she seems like a cute young woman. She's like a 17-year-old.
Just like a
She's
nice
bubbly.
girl.
I say it this way: I'd be proud and fine to have her as my daughter.
Exactly.
She's a lovely, lovely girl.
That's what I'm trying to prescribe. She seems like this perfectly sweet, and it seems like she's even a little interested in him.
Yeah.
She's like, hi, Charlie. How are you
Just
doing?
like a little
And she's like, I don't want to.
I bet she doesn't have a lot of people.
I bet
in the ship.
Probably not.
Janice probably talked him up and was like, "Oh, he's a nice kid.
He's a little weird, but
he's a little quirky."
And she's like, I'd like to meet a boy my
Yeah,
age because I'm
exactly.
like 17. And Charlie completely ignores her, which hurts her feelings.
He just
And then-
gives her a smile and doesn't talk to her.
And then
she's just like,
Rand gets mad because he's like, that was really rude. Because I imagine that with Rand being like the senior yeoman and Lawton being like a yeoman, like third class, she's probably a little bit of like a mentor.
Yeah,
Big, kind of like a mentally motherly figure to this young woman. And she's like, I was really rude because she gets real upset.
Yeah.
He was rude to her. Then Rand goes like, he has this real creepy monologue, which seems like it was salvaged from when this was a horror because this actually works.
Because it's really, really creepy.
Very uncomfortable. Again, it's that r/nice guys, but that r/night guy is not like a 40-year-old neckbeard. Like he's like a homicidal maniac with the powers of a god. And he's talking about how no one's like you, no one smells like you. I'm hungry all over. And Janice is freaking out.
It makes me like physically
Centipedes across my body.
Oh yeah.
Like,
And it's gentlemen, would this episode have been better if the whole tone was like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually
would have.
because that made me uncomfortable, but it was also one of the only times that it really worked.
Yes. Otherwise, it just goes into this like.
It makes Charlie a real villain and not like a. What the heck is it?
there's some yakety sax going on for the rest of it. That's for sure.
So it's like this scene does work.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work in a vacuum, and it's not
In
supported.
the overall context.
But Because then, once again, I saw in Bailey's notes, and it's like, we gaslight Janice again.
Yes.
Because Rand, who's very upset, because of course she is, we're upset. We're 3 grown men.
She brings it up with her captain,
who's supposed to be concerned for her, and Kirk's just
who's
like,
smirking at her.
He's like, come on, Janice.
Gaslighting
He's
her.
like, he's just a kid,
He's
Janice.
just a boy.
But then there's a great line where Janice is like, more or less condensed down to, if Charlie doesn't chill, I'll have to hurt him. And having come out of the enemy within and knowing that she actually gave evil Kirk quite the beating.
Yeah.
She scratched him up real bad.
Yeah, that's sort of what she's saying she's going to have to do now. And you'd think Kirk would understand that.
And then he's like, okay. It's when she says, look, if Charlie doesn't back off, like, I'm going to take matters in my own hands and protect myself, that Kirk's like, okay, I'll talk to him.
Okay, but then
he smirks after her.
Okay, but also, like
he's like, Janice, like, you could beat up this, like, 18-year-old.
Condescending Kirk is not a good look for this captain.
I just realized, though, she just says, like, I'll take it into my own hands and I will hurt him. Then Kirk takes him and does self-defense training with him.
Oh, my Lord! Is he trying to protect Charlie from Janice? Probably not, but I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, I just got
Bailey.
that now. I was like, what?
Folks, that's why you had 3 people on this podcast, because I did not think of that. I don't think you even thought of that,
No.
So,
this is Dad Kirk being really bad at being a dad.
Before Dad Kirk teaches his homicidal godson about self-defense, we have a scene in Kirk's quarters where Kirk really gives him the talk. And actually, Kirk has some decent lines in this scene that are in a vacuum. Again, it's wasted in this episode.
And it would have been better if it was written, like, the entire episode was written just better.
I'm sorry, DC. I feel really bad. Like, I like Journey to Babel a lot.
I don't. I haven't met his new episodes yet. Her new episodes. See, there you go. That's how little I know about this person. So for this to be my first impression,
exactly,
you're gonna have to show me some better stuff.
Charlie is talking about how it's like, well, I like her, and Kirk's like, yeah, well, tough. That's life. And he says, well, what am I supposed to do? He says, you hang on for dear life, and you'll live. He says, it's this problem that every man's been dealing with since the first model rolled out. And it's like, okay. But Kirk says, there's a million things in this galaxy you can have, and a million you can't. That's the way it is. Tough luck, son. Just deal with it. Uhura calls him about a course change. And I guess Charlie's not completely stupid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because Kirk does his best to be like, oh, yeah, let's Spock do that. But you can kind of tell he's like, dang it, Uhura, like, we're trying to be subtle about this. Now, to be fair to Uhura, she didn't know that Kirk was giving Charlie the talk in his cabin.
Yeah.
And
this is where we start
Kirk then takes him to the gymnasium. And that was kind of exciting because in the last episode we watched, Sulu wanted to take Riley to the gymnasium. We could have had that 2 minutes instead of the time travel. We could have seen Sulu in the gymnasium because we got some women doing some flips and there's some guys like working out with machines.
Not
Star
great
Trek,
machines,
men in
let's be
tights.
real. Yeah, oh man, those tights.
We have our next Kirk, shirtless Kirk. What does that bring our number up to?
Well, we're +1 on 3, so we're actually at 4 now.
4 shirtless, 2 ripped shirts.
Goodness.
So Kirk has had a ripped shirt or been shirtless in every episode but one?
Yeah, that's intense.
Man, Shatner got to get it in because in the last episode, Takei and Spock were like really buff. Everyone on the ship is buff. Even Nichelle Nikos has a 6-pack. There's one episode where like, Mirror, where you see it, you're like, wow, she'd been hitting that crunch machine. So they do some throws and some sparring. Kirk is like, hey man, first you got to learn how to break a fall. To me, I understand Kirk has been kind of almost off this episode, but this seems like the first smart Kirk decision all episode.
He's pretty
because
chill.
he's like, okay, he's got sexual frustration issues. Let's get him into a physical activity. Let's have him burn off some of that energy. Okay.
The way that guys actually burn off their energy, which is good.
So he teaches Charlie how to fall. And there's a nice little touch with a guy working out in the room. His name is Sam, and Kirk's like, Sam, I want to practice with you. And I do like how Kirk knows the names of all these people. Just
it was really cool.
And Sam is in his sweats, so he's not wearing his name tag.
Yeah.
So Kirk just knows. He's like, okay, Sam. Kirk and Sam have a little throw. Charlie tries to tussle with Kirk, but Kirk doesn't let him win, and he throws
and he's honestly playing with him like a dad would play with their younger child. It's like he's letting him exert himself. He's not throwing him all over and just like slamming him, but he's giving him a chance to work off that energy. And he'll pin him in the end because he's trying to teach him, but he's also giving him that chance. I actually liked that moment. It was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Sam laughs at Charlie's failure, which is not necessarily smart, but whatever.
That's the fatal
and so
mistake.
But he wouldn't have known, right?
And so Charlie blinks Sam out of existence. Right in front of Kirk.
Now, to be fair, in this one, there's a fade-out effect. And I want to point this out because there's not a lot of consistency in a lot of the effects in this episode. He sort of turns white and fades for this first instance of deletion.
But he's going to delete more characters, folks.
And they're not going to do that.
And you might be thinking, well, why haven't you added Sam, poor Sam, rest in peace, to the body count? Well, spoilers, folks, but who cares, because this episode is a mess. At the end of the episode, when Charlie's parents show up, they unblink all of the damage. So we can
Except
assume,
for the Antares, which remains dead, but they aren't crew, so nobody cares.
So we can assume that Sam gets to live, because later in this episode, Janice gets blinked out of existence for telling Charlie to jump off a cliff, basically, or to soak his head. Janice and Bones are like the shining lights in this
So
episode.
the Sass Masters are back.
So bless them both for trying their hardest. And I guess even Spock has got some good parts, because I do like that Spock's like, well, we might have to kill this kid.
Yeah.
Where was I? He blinks Sam out of existence, and Kirk rightfully freaks out, because up until this point, he's been assuming that Charlie's mostly harmless. And now you just watch a crewman get, like, Thanos right out of existence before your very eyes. And Kirk's like, don't do that, Charlie. He calls for security. 2 security guards run in, and Charlie winks their phasers out of existence.
Yes.
And then later, it turns out he's winked all the phasers out of existence across the entire ship.
Which is actually sort of cool. I like that little touch.
Yeah.
It's actually...
Because he doesn't have, like, full control over his
That's what
power
this episode is, folks. Us going, I like this little bit.
This concept.
Or I like this one scene. Or I like this one line. But it's buried underneath all this crap. Like,
oh, goodness.
Like, and for me, Ethan doesn't agree with me, and I respect his difference in his opinion. But
As
for
always.
me, Mudd's women, in my personal opinion, was salvaged by Harry Mudd himself, which is a character I like. Charlie is not a likable character, and he's not supposed to be.
Nope.
He has none of that, like, charming mudness, if that's even a word. He's terrible.
Yeah.
And Star Trek is going to have tons of episodes about godlike aliens that the crew is horribly outmatched with. And they're all better than this. You could watch the pilot. You could argue that Corbomite maneuver is kind of like that. This episode reminds me of Squire of Gothos a lot, which is coming up, which is basically the first Q episode before Q becomes a character. But that episode is good. That's really all I can say about it. Like, that episode is good. The evil alien has some charm. He's got some power behind him. He's not like an adolescent kid. And even he, too, has got a bit of that, like, yeah, I like them ladies just fine, but he's also like an adult. It's a lot less creepy and weird. But again, I'm getting horribly off track because we just don't really want to talk about this episode.
But we commit to. That was our promise at the beginning. Every single episode.
That includes gray matter. That includes Sub Rosa. That includes Spock's brain. That includes the empath. Folks, that includes like half a Voyager, folks. Like, we believe in what we do. And yet, I find some joy in this shared misery. I'm glad we were all together to experience this train wreck. Anyway, there's this greatly lit scene.
Yeah.
So again, credit.
Yes.
I appreciate the direction. Dobkin did a good job because Charlie's eyes are lit and the rest of him is quite dark, and it gives him a maniacal.
Yeah,
Again,
really
it's horror.
works.
It's horror Charlie, and that Charlie usually pans out okay.
And Kirk has also got lighting to show some contrast, but Kirk's general background is brighter.
Yeah,
like, there's focus on his eyes to kind of get that staring contest going, but Charlie is all in darkness except for his eyes. And credit where credit is due to Robert Walker, the actor who played Charlie. He's creeping as standing there in the dark like, I won't let them hurt me. It's like, they're not going to hurt you. He's like, I'll make them. Because Kirk's sending him to his quarters because that's the kind of guy that Kirk is.
Again, the acting is good. It's the writing.
And Kirk's like, Charlie, if you don't go to your room, I'll pick you up and carry you there. Because Kirk doesn't care. He's already punched one god. He'll punch another.
And Charlie does remind him that he could, in fact, delete him. But Kirk is nonetheless firm that the godlike being needs to go to his room. And thus, he does, which is, sort of neat, I guess.
I like that Kirk is not afraid of any of this. Anyway, he sends them back, and then they have another briefing.
This is the weird briefing to me. It's very weird, and it doesn't show off Kirk very well, because I get that Kirk is trying his best to reform this individual, but the excuses he makes for him are a little odd. Yeah. He's like, sure, he has short temper and no regard for human life, but what 17-year-old doesn't?
No, to be fair, he doesn't. They haven't confirmed that the Antares has been blown up yet.
True.
But he's about to in this scene.
Yes.
Because Spock asks if Charlie might be a Thasian. Like, he might be an alien. And McCoy says, no, he's definitely human. McCoy makes a comment about his finger and toe growth.
Yep. Which, I don't know. Sort of
I'm not a doctor.
Nothing special, it's just there.
And what are we going to do? I don't know. Charlie enters the conference room then, and Kirk explicitly asks him, did you blow up the Antares? And Charlie goes, yeah, I blew it up. I made a warp backwards plate, and the energy pile disappeared. And DeForest Kelly is really good in this scene, because McCoy is sitting there, and he looks like he's doing this stone face thing, but you can also tell he's like, holy crap, what? He says, they weren't nice to me, so I made them go away. And if you're not nice to me, I'll make you go away. And then he just leaves, and Spock tells everyone, hey, we're in the hands of an adolescent. Because Spock treats Charlie like he's 5.
And he's correct to do so.
Yes.
So Charlie now has been revealed that his powers are there, so he's like, whatever, I'm going to do whatever I want.
And then there's this montage
of him being a dick to women.
Just...
And I know it sounds like we're picking on that specifically because he does freeze the male crew members, but he passes a random woman we have not met.
First it's Tina.
He meets Tina, poor Tina.
Lizard.
Tina's done nothing to him. She even goes, "Hi, Charlie." He turns her into a lizard because she's not Janice.
And then there's the other girl that passes by.
Who he hasn't even met.
The yellow.
He makes her an old lady.
He makes her an old lady.
And then
there's the laughing people.
He's like, no laughing.
And one of these crewmen, who's a woman, she comes standing there. Her face has been disappeared in an effect that's way too effective for that era. Because I was like, what? Her face!
Which would have worked if it was a horror show.
That's a horrifying thing to have your facial features just zapped away.
And it's revealed that it's not just among the halls that this is happening. He seems to be doing it remotely in parts of the ship, because this part is the transition. It goes to the bridge, and Uhura's at her comm. And
he zaps Uhura!
He zaps Uhura through the comm. Uhura doesn't deserve to get zapped.
Absolutely.
Uhura doesn't deserve any of the crap, and neither does Janice, because that's where Charlie is going. He's going to go see Janice, and he's also taken over the entire ship. He's manually controlling it because Kirk and crew have tried to change course, and he's like, nope, we are going to the Colony 5. So he's locked down communications, he's locked out the ship, nobody can do nothing. Uhura's got second-degree burns now, for goodness sakes.
But there's one person, one hero, who won't let Charlie get his way.
It's Janice! Janice is the MVP of this episode. Like she is in all episodes where Sulu is not present, because Sulu is the real MVP of all episodes. He goes to Janice's quarters, and he gives her, he just barges in. Janice is in her pajamas, her little nightgown.
And she's like, you can't do this.
And he gives her a pink rose, because she's like, pink's your favorite color, right? And she does not care. He tells her, she's like, get lost. Like, she tells him to leave. He says, you can't lock your door. I mean, she says, I'll lock my door whatever I want.
And she's, 500 IQ play here. She turns on the comm to the...
It's brilliant!
It was very smart.
And because she turns the comm on subtly as Charlie starts to get handsy with her and aggressive. It's like, poor Janice. Like, seriously. Almost every appearance that she's in, someone just get handsy.
And she, honestly, her room is not a safe place. How many times so far have we seen where she's been in her room and then someone just comes in her room and starts to dance on her?
Twice! And this is only episode 7.
She's like, why do they have a lock?
They need to get psychologists on the ship.
We had a psychologist, remember? She fell in love with the godlike being.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
The walking freezer unit, Dr. Denner.
Oh, ESP.
Yes, the ESP test.
If only Janice's ESP scores have been particularly high.
You know whose are?
Charlie's. So, because Janice warns them by activating the communication. So Kirk and Spock rush into Janice's quarters to stop Charlie from being handsy with Janice. But he whips him against the wall and breaks Spock's legs. Yeah. He hits the wall so hard he leaves a dent in it. You can see it in the shot.
Which Spock doesn't really react to all that much. He broke my legs.
I think Spock behaves perfectly in character, because would a Vulcan be so undignified as to cry out in pain when his legs were broken?
True. Yeah, but he would show his pain.
Who knows? Spock is still showing his personality. So
I don't know. So. I feel like Kirk is being a little off in this episode, but everybody else is being on. But again, it's worth pointing out that a large number of the cast are not in this episode.
Yeah.
Scotty's not in it. Sulu's not in it. Nurse Chapel's not in it.
Riley's
not in it. Lieutenant Farrow's not in it. He's still got one more appearance. It's not this episode, thank goodness. For all you Farrow fanboys out there. He only does quality episodes like Mud's Women.
You know who else is not in this episode that we absolutely needed? When you have a villain, you need to bring in another villain. That's what Godzilla taught me.
Who do we need?
needed Mitchell.
Oh, man. I would like to have seen Gary Mitchell throw down with
The
Charlie.
Clash of the Titans this Monday.
You Star Trek novelists, I want you to write that story out there right now. Send us your best Gary Mitchell versus Charlie Evans fan fiction. I want it on my desk on Monday. Come on, folks.
If that's
I want
actually
that battle
written,
of the century.
I might actually read it if I'm honest.
And we could do a special. I'd be good with that.
Absolutely.
We could do a review of the book.
Ooh, be better than this episode.
My goodness, would it ever?
But then the saddest part of the episode happens.
Because Janice has had enough of Charlie. He says he loves her. She says, you don't know what that is. And she slaps him in the freaking face.
Deleted.
And then he deletes Janice. And we all went, no, Janice!
But on the technical side of things, hers is just a...
Yeah, like an actual thing.
It's like an actual, like, there's a scene transition, like they go from one clip of film to the next. It's like she's there one, she's not there the other, which is different than
And Charlie
Sam's.
goes,
so weird.
why'd you make me do that, Kirk? I loved Janice. And Kirk goes, no, you didn't. Because Kirk has realized that Charlie needs him alive, and he's taking advantage of that. Because Charlie's kind of stopped.
Yeah.
For the most of the episode, Charlie backs down when Kirk gets in his face.
Now
but now it's more like, I just need you to run the ship, because I don't know what I'm doing.
And he says if you don't, a lot of people are going to disappear.
Which actually, this is where like the logic comes kind of back into the episode a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
They tried to hide him. Kirk and Spock try to, because Charlie fixes Spock's legs, because Kirk's like, you need me to run the ship, and I need him. And they try to trap him in a force field. Charlie just deletes the wall.
Yep.
Goes back to the bridge. Maybe this is when he goes on his rampage.
Yeah, this is when he goes on
Right.
his rampage. I just checked my
I
notes.
did
This
too.
is it.
He goes on his rampage. Folks, he goes on a terrible rampage. Tina gets turned into a lizard. It's very sad. A lady gets her face disappeared. It's horrible. They are back on the bridge, not Charlie.
No, Tina's turned into a lizard earlier.
You're right.
Right before she goes, see,
Tina got turned into a lizard, folks.
Okay, I'm just going to correct our timeline because we're a little off just to set it up. Before he goes to Janice's room, that's where he does his singular thing, Tina to the lizard. Then to go to Janice, and that whole scene plays out. And then once he sort of gets the crew as his hostages to make him do what he wants,
After he deletes
sort
the
of gets a
wall.
little bit of freedom
Yes,
after deleting
yes,
the wall.
yes.
And that's when he goes around, he does the woman's age, he does the people's faces.
And yeah, this episode just melted our brains.
Yeah,
That's why.
and it's so hard to put together because you normally use like people's character arc in an episode
Yeah.
to help you keep track of what's going on.
But
Charlie has no character arc.
He's 1 minute you're thinking, oh, Charlie, maybe you're going to turn your life around. And the next it's like, oh, I am the
and
devil.
that's that switch where he turns into his obsession with Janice, and it's the focus shifts from like socially awkward guy to sexually obsessed crazy man. And then after that, there's no character arc. He's just evil, and so you can't
Until right at the very end when we're supposed to feel sad. But
Yeah.
we'll get there because that to me might be the nail in the coffin of the whole episode, folks. So Kirk and Spock and crew are back on the bridge, and they're like, man, Charlie didn't blink me out last time when he had to. I think it's because his power's tapped. Makes sense. A little, as Bailey said, a little bit of logic returns to the episode. They get Charlie onto the bridge. He sits in Kirk's chair, and Kirk has this great line. He's like, get out of my chair. Get out of it right now. And Charlie's like, I could kill you. Kirk's like, no, you can't. Maybe you need to control the ship, and you don't have enough power for that. Spock, McCoy, turn everything on.
This was a good idea.
Yeah.
I liked this.
Spock and McCoy run around the... Well, you think the episode might be salvaged by this delightful little scene, because then Kirk attacks Charlie when he's distracted, throws him across the room. Charlie tries to, like, Sith Lord choke Kirk and starts torturing his body, but Kirk fights through the pain. He grabs Charlie by the collar. He's got his fist back. Kirk is going to punch a 17-year-old boy right in the face.
And I was going to cheer.
Full knuckle.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, nobody cried when Joffrey died on Game of Thrones, folks, and he was younger than Charlie. So
I cared
give
more
it a
about
rest.
Joffrey than I do about Charlie.
Hey, man, Joffrey at least had an arc.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ahora's been receiving strange comm signals. Charlie freaks out. We get our Deus Ex Machina solution, which, of course, is the worst kind of solution. But at this point, who gives a flying fart? The Thasian shows up. He's a floating head that's like kind of terribly edited in.
Yeah.
Even in folks, I sing the praise of the remaster. I'm going to assume they just couldn't do anything here because it looks terrible. He's a bald guy. He's a green floating head. Who cares? It's the Thasians, and he's like Charlie.
And the kid doesn't want to go home. Who cares? Nobody wants him around.
The kid, because they're like, hey guys, we taught Charlie the power of God to survive. Oops, didn't work. We're sorry. They're like, we're sorry we got out. I tried to undo everything. Couldn't fix the crew of the Antares. But hey, Janice gets beamed back, and we hope that Tina got turned back into a regular self.
Yeah, because he did say everything.
He did say everything got back to normal. So a little bit of that Deus Ex Machina, but
And
who
then
cares?
Charlie's like, "Oh, you
And
guys
then
are my friends, right?"
This is the thing that, to me, really puts the nail in the coffin. And this is going to be where I'm going to have to really decide how my vote goes. Because it feels to me like they're trying to sell Charlie as ultimately sympathetic. Because Kirk is like, well, do you have to take him back? Like, could we teach him not to use evil? And the alien dad is like, no, it doesn't work like that. Which, to be fair, is smart. To be fair, that guy at least is written well because he's like, no, once he's got this power, he's never going to not have it. And he's like, we're going to beam Charlie back with us. And Kirk is like, okay. So I guess not ultimately, like, because Charlie's like, I don't want to go. They can't love me. They're intangible. I don't want to be alone. You're my friends, right? And nobody comes to him. McCoy actually, like, protectively puts his arm around Janice, which is a really nice little McCoy-type touch, because McCoy's like this...
someone's comforting her.
Yeah, thankfully somebody cares about Janice.
Seriously.
I'm glad you're there, McCoy. You really are the heart on the Enterprise. Because every time Janice comes to Kirk with a legitimate complaint, he just gaslights her. Anyway, Charlie gets blinked out of existence, and we typically in these episodes, we at least have a final scene with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
But
we
no.
don't even have that! The episode just ends, they're ready to be done, we're ready to be done, and it's like, normally, folks, I hate a Deus Ex Machina ending. I'm just glad it's here. Now,
It brought relief.
and I'm going to say this. For every complaint I've said about Charlie X, this episode moved well. We were done before we knew it. It's not because, like, the Naked Time, which is paced well where it grips, or Corbomite, which is paced well because of time tension. You're just like, what terrible decision is going to happen
It's not
next?
even that this was paced well. It didn't have pace. It didn't have story.
I watched all the way through. I never checked my watch once.
I did a lot. So
I checked my watch on Mud's Women. I did not check my watch on this, and yet I would rather watch Mud's Women 3 times in a row than watch this pile of garbage. So, folks, this is the time where we rate our episodes on an A to F scale. That's how we like to do it, just to give kind of a quick bit summary of what we thought. We're going to go down the line. Ethan?
I'm going to break the rules and I'm going to give it an E. Because it's an F, but you could pay me to watch it. And that's about it. I've destroyed our system we agreed upon earlier.
You can't do that. Come on, just bump it up to the F that it deserves.
No, it's going to be an E, for I'm the contrary.
I swear we're going to have a unanimous vote for once.
I know, and I'm a bad man, but...
Why does this episode get an E and not an F?
Because you could pay me to watch it.
But
it fails.
By that logic, couldn't I pay you to watch an F?
No.
I don't understand that.
Really?
Because if an E is worse than an F, I could pay you to watch an E, why would? Oh right, E comes before F.
Yeah, that's an alphabet fail, my friends.
It's not my fault that they don't use E's in the grade system.
It's weird. It really is weird, which is why I'm bringing my own personal flavor to this. It's an E because it is an F that you could pay me to watch, but it doesn't mean it's not a failure.
But isn't Sub Rosa like an F? But like I would watch it.
No,
it's hilarious.
No, there's a few that are. As far as I know,
Ethan's going to be a contrarian, but we're just going to pretend he said F.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that.
Ethan says F. Why?
Because I originally gave it a D+, and then I realized that all the things that I initially thought were good were like flukes, and everything that was intentional about this episode was as bad as it could be. All of the conscious decisions that were made in creating the narrative of this episode and designing the characters were bad decisions. And all of the things that could have happened with Charlie to make it a decent episode were just breezed over or missed or given too little time. And fundamentally, I think that there is some bit of cringe factor in here. Does it matter that was part of the decision? It should. But I can't put myself in that frame of mind for long enough to watch the full episode and enjoy it. Do I readily admit that yes, this is what would happen to someone abandoned for all these time and given godlike powers? Does it technically play out? Yes. But does it make it a good episode of Star Trek? For the love of God, no. This is the worst I've seen so far.
So Ethan, you could pay him to watch it, but that's about it. So Bailey, what rating on an A to F scale are you going to give Charlie X? Are you going to line up with Ethan and say F/E as well?
Given this roller coaster ride, which I actually drew a roller coaster when we watched this on my sheet.
It's right there.
I am definitely going to give this an F for oof.
Why,
Lord?
Why is this episode an F?
Let's start. It's all over the place with its theme and their concepts, and oh my goodness gracious! If someone, I will put this challenge out there. If someone watches this and decides to edit this episode to make it a sci-fi horror, I would love that. That would change it completely, and that would bring it.
Wouldn't even be hard, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I have nothing else to say. It's just
Folks, I will readily admit that when it comes to the original series, my glasses are a little red. They're a little rose-colored. I was probably too generous with Mudd's women, and Ethan may have raised some fair points about how I felt about the Man Trap and Naked Time as being maybe a little better. I do stand by those decisions.
Yep.
Folks, no amount of rose-colored glasses is going to change how I feel about Charlie X. I am going to set a new record for myself on this show for the first time, and I'm going to drop my first F2, making this the first unanimous vote across the board.
Bit of trivia for the folks out there. At the very beginning of this episode, I asked Alec what he thought he might end up giving this episode. He's like, yeah, maybe somewhere in the season.
Because I thought it would be totally forgettable.
Yeah.
On average. Folks, this episode is terrible. The pacing is bizarre. It all takes place on the Enterprise. You don't even get a cool planet to look at. Sulu's not in it, so like half the crew are missing. Kirk is weirdly out of character in some scenes. He doesn't feel consistent. You have a few decent Spock bits. You got some decent Janice bits. But it's not salvaged. This is a tonal mess. Some scenes, even in the middle, are about people dying, and then turkeys. This is supposed to be a horror, but then it's not. The effects are terrible. Charlie looks like he's taking a dump every time he uses his evil powers. Tina gets turned into a lizard for like no reason, and that just makes me sad. Tina. I don't like anything. That's not true. But the things I like about this episode are YouTube clips. So, like, folks, if you're one of those people who is like, you like Star Trek, but you can't quite bring yourself to watch every episode of the original series, skip this one. Go on YouTube and Google Uhura sings a song about how Spock is Satan. Watch that one scene, because that scene is great. We all liked it. And then just skip this one. Charlie X is a total stinker. But hey, congratulations, Charlie, because you were the first episode to get a unanimous vote out of the Boldly Going crew. So well done. F, the first F. You'll go down in history as the turd you are.
Unless you pay me.
Now, folks, we may have hit a terrible turd in the middle of this road, but next week we come back for Balance of Terror, a legitimate masterpiece. Maybe the best episode of the original series of all time, and that's not just my opinion, that's the opinion of a lot of people out there. Folks, that episode is a masterpiece. So I know this week was rough, even if it was kind of fun to rip apart such a terrible episode, I'm not going to lie. But stick with us for Balance of Terror. Until then, have a good week. I'm glad you all survived. Charlie X. Cheerio.